Hi, everyone. A big digital but human hello. My name is Mitch Jackson. Welcome to Human Socials, Human Side Interviews with Mr. Ted Rubin. Ted, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mitch. So happy to be here with you. I'm glad we got all the technical difficulties worked out, and I'm ready to have a nice chat. So thanks for reaching out and having me on your show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day. I really appreciate it. Before I introduce Ted and before we dive into our show, let me just share with our listeners, and there will be a podcast version of this video interview later in the day. So for those of you listening on the podcast, we have some exciting upcoming interviews happening on the Human Side Interviews. We've got Ann Handley, Bob Berg, Chris Brogan, David Merriman Scott, Joe Paluzzi, Jason Fried, and more joining us on the Human Side Interviews. So make sure to tune in. Go to human.social for our latest schedule. But enough about that. Let's get to our special guest today, Mr. Ted Rubin. Ted Rubin is a leading social media marketing strategist. He's a keynote speaker. He's a brand evangelist and acting CMO of Brand Innovators. For many of you, the term coined by Ted back in 2009, ROR, return on relationship, truly reflects his approach to business, social, and life. Ted, once again, thanks for being on the show today.
Oh, I'm excited to be here, Mitch. Thanks a lot, and thanks for that wonderful introduction. Thank God you didn't go on for too long.
Well, I'll tell you what, I could have gone on and on and on, but what I wanted to jump in and really address some issues right away is you indicated that relationships are the new currency when it comes to marketing, when it comes to business, when it comes to digital relationships. What do you mean by that? What have you seen change over the years, and frankly, what do you see happening over the next couple of years with respect to relationships, marketing, and successfully engaging business, relationships with others on and offline?
Well, it's really about technology capabilities and a changing environment. So, when I say that relationships are the new currency, almost always there's somebody in the audience, somebody I'm bunking into, who looks at me or raises their hand, or I can see it going through their head, and they're saying, come on, Ted, relationships have always been the currency. I mean, everybody knows the expression, it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But the reason I say it's really the new currency is because today you can scale those relationships 24/7 without ever leaving your bedroom. Now, I'm not advocating never leaving your bedroom, but the point I'm trying to make is there was a time, whether you were employed, unemployed, no matter what you're doing, you needed time and budget to go meet a lot of people, to go to events, to get around. I mean, there was a time when someone was unemployed and people were saying, hey, you need to go to networking events. You need to get yourself out there. But they'd also have the problem with, how do I afford to do that? How do I travel to events? How do I pay for those things? But now you don't have to do that. You can be doing that around the clock all the time, no matter whether you're employed, unemployed, family, kids. There's always extra time. Like Gary Vaynerchuk likes to say, sleep when you die. Carve out a few extra hours if you think you don't have the time. And and then of course there's the technology and capabilities aspect. I mean, when before this day and age could you reach out to so many people? Could you connect to so many in an open environment where everybody could see those connections and participate in them, and therefore scale it in a way that I call most people participating vicariously, which they're watching our conversations and they feel like they're building a relationship with us. And then when we get to environment, it's that I think commerce, connectivity has gone full circle. I think there was a time where everybody wanted to know, back when I was growing up in the 60s and before that in the 50s and the 70s, people, it started out in the 50s and 60s and earlier times, people wanted to know their merchants. They wanted to know who they were buying from. They wanted to know who Mitch was, and that Mitch knew who they were and could recommend accordingly products, services, even be a part of their family in certain ways as friends. Then all of a sudden, all this technology came about where mass merchandisers popped up, and you were able to be anonymous. Like, wow, I could be anonymous. I can go to a store, nobody knows who I am. I could do my thing. I can leave my hair up. I can leave it in curlers if I'm a woman. Remember the days of curlers? Oh, God, showing our age here. But, I could wear a sweatsuit. As George Costanza would say on Seinfeld, I could be bathed in velvet, and it wouldn't matter. But what's happened is everybody's learned that with the way technology is advanced, everybody does know our every move. Everybody does know what we're doing, but they don't want it to just be used to upsell us. They want it to be used to add value to our lives. And everybody is willing to give up their data, their information, things about them, where they are, all the beacons you want, as long as you add value and don't just try to push more product on me.
And I want to talk to you a little bit about adding value in the manner that you're discussing. A couple of things, and let me give all of our viewers and all of our listeners a little bit of a roadmap of where I want to go today. I want to talk to you a little bit about, return on relationships, that type of ROI factor that you've coined and that you've written about in your book, Return on Relationships, that you co-wrote with Catherine Rose. I also want to talk to you a little bit about value, if you saw any, being given on Sunday during the Super Bowl ads. I was following your Twitter feed, and it was interesting to see the direction the Super Bowl ads took this year. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I'd also like to roll over briefly, Ted, and talk a little bit about your early years. That's, for me, it's one of the fun part about these interviews. What made you the person that you are today? What led up to the decisions that you're making today? And then talk a little bit about what you have planned for 2015. So let's go back to the beginning of that. With respect to this new mindset, this relationship-focused engagement with customers and clients that businesses, small and large, need to take today, does that require a new type of mindset that people need to get and understand and appreciate, both from the top of an organization down to probably the lowest employee on the totem pole? Or is this something that just simply needs to be reshaped and remolded? It's a proven concept that needs to be rolled out again, maybe in a slightly different fashion.
I think it's both, Mitch. I mean, that's a great point. I mean, first of all, I think everything's about mindset. I mean,
Okay.
Whether it's attitude, perspective. I like to say that a lot. I mean, mindset is very important to me. It's something important I think about with my daughters. A woman named Carol Dweck, PhD, wrote an amazing book called Mindset. That is a great book for adults, but a lot of it is geared towards parents with children, and the way that we put things in our kids' head. Johnny isn't good at that. Lori doesn't like to do that. Mm-hmm. All these parents speaking for their kids instead of letting their kids figure out things for themselves. But it goes beyond that. It goes to employees. It goes to friends. It goes to a boss saying, we don't do that here. Or that's not what our brand is about. Really? Well, your brand is about perception. Your brand, I like to say a business, a brand is what a business or a person does. A reputation is what people remember. So, and talking about reputation, I do want to clear up one thing. I did not coin the term return on relationship. If you look at most of my bio and things, it says I started using and evangelizing. Now, when I first started using it, I thought I coined it. And some of my early writing might have mentioned that, which I've gone back and corrected. But I discovered when I went to write the book, and you start doing some research in the background, that back in 2002, a high-level consultancy, and I do not recall the name of it, wasn't one that's familiar to our names, wrote a white paper called Return on Relationship. And a lot of it was about the kind of things I talk about. So, and they did nothing with it. Unfortunately, neither did anybody else. So when I kind of adopted the term and thought I developed it, because I really did, I came up with it one day and said, wow, that's great. And, I coined this great term. And so I just like to be clear that some other people over the ages have talked about this kind of concept. But I took ownership of it, started evangelizing it in 2009, wrote the book. Subsequently wrote How to Look People in the Eye Digitally, which is an extension of Return on Relationship. And I just think that's really important. I think, again, like I said, a reputation is what people remember. And I like people to know that I take credit I give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, and no issue there. It was, when I heard that phrase, I heard it for the first time reading your book.
Right, and most people,
it is what it is.
And I've taken ownership of it, and it's related to me because I've been talking about it for years now. So, just wanted to talk about that. And I'd love to chat about all these other topics that you're talking about. Why don't you tell me where you want to go first?
Sure. How well do you think, looking at the Super Bowl ads this past Sunday, how well did they do building relationships, generally speaking, with their existing and potential customer base? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I thought there was some good and some bad. I definitely think there was some ball drops. But, look, this is the age of experimentation. I mean, there's no guarantees when you jump into a Super Bowl ad. And you got to give it your best shot. Everybody wants to stand out. So everybody tries to take some certain angle. I love that Budweiser jumped back in with their puppy ads, because who doesn't love a puppy? I mean, seriously, right? Especially a lab puppy. I mean, how to hit on the heartstrings. You know, everyone's talking about how Nationwide dropped the ball. But look, they gave it their best shot. The thing I was really critical about, I think if you go back and look at my tweets, I wasn't very critical about ads. I was discussing them. I was jumping in about them. Again, some good, some bad. I was really critical about the halftime show. I thought that was a disaster. I think it was a horrible ball drop. I think they're so worried about staging and presentation that they overlooked the fact that they had 3 incredible artists who are so incredibly talented. So again, some people read my tweets and thought I was criticizing the talent of the artists. No way. These people are amazing. But look at Katy Perry. She couldn't even sing. She was more worried about whether she was going to fall off all those crazy apparatuses. Did you see her on that tiger? The way she kept, like, her eyes kept looking down, and her voice, like, people were saying that doesn't sound like Katy Perry, because, like, she couldn't really, and then she's on that damn swing. I mean, to me, this was just a bunch of crap. I mean, you hire people like that. Let them perform. Stop worrying about the staging. So I was very critical of that, because I thought it was a big disappointment. And what I also noticed was I reached out to a lot of friends and a lot of kids, and everyone was saying, oh, the kids love it. The kids didn't love it. The kids thought it was, again, same thing. Like, it was like what people are doing on social when they put all the pretty campaign crap around it. And then and then you respond to people. FedEx reaches out to me on a campaign some agency sent to them, and sends me a box of stuff from Duke when I visited Duke and engaged with me, and then never replied to me when I reached out to them 12 times via Twitter to thank them. Because they weren't really engaging. They were just trying to get me to go, oh, wow, this is really cool. They forgot about the fact that if it was cool and I'm an influencer, I'm going to jump out and tell them. And then when they don't respond to me, I'm going to be upset. And to me, that's kind of like what the halftime show was about. It was like delivering on all the promise but none of the goods. So
yeah, I agree.
That's where, and also I think that's an important point, because all these advertisers paid to be a part of something that people loved. I mean, the game. I mean, who could have asked for a better game? No matter which side you were on, no matter who you wanted to win, I don't think anybody questioned this was a game of the ages. It was a game that came down to the last seconds. Everybody stayed engaged, so that was great for advertisers. I think that the other way it went with that. So, like I said, I like some, I didn't like some. Some of them try to get too creative, but hey, that's the ad game. That's what it's all about. It's take your shot. And then here's the other thing I have an issue with. When and if you do something great, don't just let it end with the event. Right. Continue it. Continue the discussion via social. Wrap a social show around everything you do. And I think more and more brands are doing that. I think many more of them were engaged socially around their advertisements, but where the ball drop comes in for a lot of them, and I haven't analyzed this, so I'm not going to speak about particular brands because I don't know, but I guarantee you a lot of them are getting a lot of responses now and engagement via the ads they ran, and they're not paying attention to it, or they're not communicating, or they're just jumping in, and they're not even liking it. I mean, brands overlook Facebook so incredibly. They engage on Twitter. On Facebook, they're just advertising. Even their posts, even their complaints about the algorithms. I mean, those were just ads anyway when you were just pumping stuff in and it was hitting people's feeds. Now you have to actually engage with people in order for them to see your things. You have to actually put on valuable content to get them to want to come back.
You know, I thought it was interesting. My take on Super Bowl halftime and the ads are fairly similar to yours, and it's not what I do for a living, but I got a kick out of Marshawn Lynch before the game started grabbing a handful of Skittles.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, that's, you know, at $4 million for 30 seconds, that was a beautiful thing. I would have liked to have seen the ads take the viewer back online. Help us write the end of this commercial. Help us decide what the next step's going to be, or go here for that. I didn't see that type of engagement, like keeping that relationship that you talk about so often, keeping that dialogue and relationship going. Some of the negative ads, the Nationwide ad with the life insurance deal,
right?
I don't want to engage any further in that. It was Sunday, and I wanted to watch Super Bowl and have fun, and that was a little bit too heavy for me personally. Let's go back in time real quick, Ted. Your first marketing gig, can you share with our visitors, can you share with our listeners on the upcoming podcast, what first got you interested in marketing, in relationships? Were you 6 years old selling lemonade on the corner of your street? I mean, what's your history on this?
Okay, you got me. No one's ever asked me that question, and I was that guy.
Were you that guy? Okay.
I was the kid that sold everything. I
mean, did you upsell?
Well, what I try to do is always find a better way, and I always try to get. Well, the one thing I learned early on was get other people to work for you. Although I've kind of let that go by now, because in the social world, I really need this to be genuine. It's what I pitch. But back in the day, it was always about, I mean, it started out selling lemonade, but it really went to when I was in, let's see, 5th grade. I started making pins and cufflinks in my copper kiln. You remember copper kilns? Used to bake these things, and I would sell them to kids for their families. And then I would get other kids to sell them for me in the classes I couldn't get to. And then my dad was working for one of the first companies that started importing like those old calculators, the ones you had to really press the button hard. And remember the old LED watches?
I do, Ted, because I was born in '57 like you. So yes, we traveled the same paths here.
I think those watches might be coming back, but my dad would bring them in, and I was the kid in high school that was selling those to other kids in calculators. Then my dad got these beach bags, and my whole thing was give value. It really was. It was give value, sell it cheap, sell a lot. So my dad got me these bags for $1, and everyone was like, oh my God, they're worth $5, $10. I sold them for $2 each. I'd walk down through the cabanas and the beach clubs with my arms like this, with bags all the way up. My arms were scraped because they were like straw bags by the end of the day. And of course, there was always the guy, especially the guys that worked in the fashion district in New York, they always had to bargain me down. They'd want to buy 3 of them for $5. And I'd look at them right in the eye, and I'd say, dude, you're getting value. They're $2 each, no discounts. And it's part of what I've learned today. I always tell bloggers and people building their business, you define yourself more by saying no than by saying yes. And no, I will not do that for free. No, I will not discount my fee. It's hard to turn away business, but that reputation grows that this is somebody who says I'm delivering value. So it kind of started then, and then I started painting. My dad was a guy that always made me work around the house and help out, but he'd compensate me for it in one way or another. So I started painting. He taught me how to paint the rooms in our house. We always did all that stuff ourselves. Then he had me painting the outside of the house, so I started a painting business. And of course, I did the first few houses myself so I could learn the business. And then I started hiring guys to work for me. My friends' older brothers were working for me, painting houses over the summers. So yeah, I was that guy. I was always a sales guy. My dad taught me early on the value of relationships, how you get your business through referrals, that people will pass it on, go the extra mile. He's the guy that used to stop in the middle of the road and pick up people's garbage cans, even in neighborhoods where we didn't know anybody. And now I'm that guy. My daughters look at me like I'm nuts. I pull over the car and I go. And of course, they're teenagers now. They're like, I'm not getting out and moving that garbage pail. So I say, fine, wait in the car while I do it. And, I think it builds value. And I like to say that the best marketers are former great salespeople. Because the real thing that any great salesman learns is how to listen, how to hear, and how to take action based on what you hear, not just nod your head and listen. So, that's a big part of my history. I got into the marketing world as a sales guy, joining Seth Godin's startup called Yo-Yo-Dine in 1997. I wanted to change. I had been a sales guy. I'd owned companies. I moved to Florida. I was looking to get back to New York. I discovered this thing called the internet. Seth was interviewed in an article. At the end of it, they asked if he had any job openings. He said no, but I'll always hire a smart person, which is what he was doing. He built his office brilliantly, hiring back in the day. This is back in 1996 and 7, when there were no other opportunities, women that had left their very high-powered jobs to bring up children, who were thrilled to have a local place that they could come and go and pick up their kids and do their thing. So he had a staff of brilliant women working for him for very little money. I mean, again, not that he was doing anything, like he wasn't underpaying them. He was paying what he could afford, and they were thrilled to have an opportunity. And I joined that organization because I wrote him and said, hey, I'm your guy, and I can help you build a sales team. And then I sat there under Seth's tutelage. I like to tell people I moved up from Florida. I made the mistake of moving in with my in-laws because my family was still in Florida packing up the house. And, don't ever, ever move in with your in-laws, especially if they're like the Costanzas. So all they did was ever scream at her.
Oh, my God.
All they did was scream at each other. Arthur, shut up. Mona, you idiot. And I made it my business to be up I am not an early riser. I was up at 5:30 every morning. I was out of the house by 6, and I was sitting in the office in Irvington, New York, in this cavernous office And the only other person there at 6:30 in the morning was Seth. He's an early riser, and Seth was talking about all his ideas, permission marketing, viral, the idea virus. And I just sat there and was smart enough to shut up and listen. And it was a really, really amazing opportunity. And I built a sales team, but very shortly after that, I had a couple other sales jobs, and then it kind of morphed into the marketing world. And it morphed first to a CEO role at a classical old school marketing business called the Black Book. But my role there and the way I was recruited was as a CEO who could market and sell. And it just haven't looked back.
That's a great story, and it's interesting, Ted, is I want to come back to the painting experiences, but when young trial lawyers ask me, what can I do to become a better trial lawyer, and I'll tell them wait tables and 10 bar. I mean, right. All through college, that's what I did. Has nothing to do with law school, but it helped me develop people skills that I was able to use in the courtroom, and it really made a big difference. And going back to your days of painting, what lessons, what principles did you pick up or learn back then that you're still learning, that you're still using today, and that you'd like to share with us?
Be authentic. Be straight and honest. Put in a hard day's work for a good day's pay. And then, most importantly, under-promise and over-deliver. And that's a hard thing to do because, first of all, we all want to overpromise, not because we want to say something that's not true, because we want the job, or we want the gig, or we want the sale, or we want the promotion, or we want the girl, or whatever, or we want the guy, whatever it happens to be. And then, of course, then all of a sudden we've got this ridiculous thing that we have to now deliver on that above promise. So my thing is try to always be reasonable, be very straight. Say, look, this is what I can do. And then sometimes my dad taught me to even look at them and say, look, you're hiring me because you want a deal. So I am not going to paint your house like the painting contractor who's going to charge you double. It's just not going to be that perfect. Everything that I do, the ceiling I put around the windows, my hand won't be as steady, but I will do a good job. I will make sure that I don't leave until you're happy. And you'll get a good value for it. So that was a really important lesson for me, in that respect. And then, of course, it was about relationship building. I mean, these people would refer me to people, and it was because I made them look good, because I thanked them, because I always remembered to go back to them and bring them a gift certificate, or bring them a thing of flowers, drop off some food, something. Now, that didn't mean anything to them. These were successful families. I was a kid, but they looked at me like, I remember a couple of the dads pulling me aside and going, kid, you're really doing this right. You're gonna go far, and keep doing what you're doing. Whether it's, Seth taught me something when I met him, was he wrote this early book that most people have never read because it was before anybody knew who he was. And he gave advice about how to interact and engage with people and how to do an interview properly. And one of the tips he gave, which I give to kids and people all the time now, actually I give it more to adults because we all think we're great at things, and maybe we're not, is show up at every interview with 3 thank you notes already addressed with a stamp on them, and a return address. And if you know who you're meeting with, then their name. And by the way, this is much easier now than it was then, because back then there was no way to research that person. Now there's no excuse not to know almost everything about them. So you can almost pre-write these things. But then his thing was always put 3 points in there. Put something personal, something business, and some insight. I mean, the insight can be as little as the people in your office seem very passionate. I mean, but always try to make it about something you had as a discussion. Then before you leave that office, sit down outside, finish those notes, drop them in the closest mailbox to the office. They will get it sometimes that day, and by the latest the next morning. And it leaves an impression on them. It's remarkable. And today, granted, there's emails and other ways to follow up, and I'm not saying ignore those, but if you want to differentiate yourself, send a personal note.
What a great tip. I mean, I love personal handwritten notes. It differentiates the prospective employee from everyone else that's applying, at least at our firm. And those types of techniques, I mean, they work better today than they ever have. One of the problems I've seen with social and with the new digital platforms, Ted, has to do with anybody can click and set up an account. But if they're going online, whether it's an individual, a small business, or a big company, and they're not going about it the right way, they can quickly shoot themselves in the foot as to developing relationships and everything else. And the tip you just shared is just a great way for people to properly engage others and properly build relationships. With your experience in sales, from painting houses to doing what you're doing today, 2015 and beyond, taking into consideration what you've seen, the direction our platforms have taken, video, podcasting, things like that, for small and medium-sized businesses wanting to engage their existing customers and their potential customers, where do you see the trend going? Do you see it going more and more towards mobile and crafting a message that's mobile friendly? Are there other platforms that you're looking at? What do you think young and old adults need to be looking at for the next couple of years when it comes to marketing and digital relationships?
Well, first of all, I think that mobile, social, the word marketing, I think it's all going to merge. I think everything is going to be mobile. I think everything's going to be social. And when I say that, I don't mean necessarily quote-unquote social marketing, but everything will be able to be socialized. But first of all, back to what you said in the beginning about people that anybody can build a page or open a platform. If you're not going to be social, don't have a presence on social platforms other than reading and seeing what other people are doing. Don't lead people to believe that you're going to communicate with them and then not. And yes, FedEx, this is a call out to you guys. Stop doing campaigns. Stop reaching out to people. Stop having a presence if you have absolutely no intention of ever responding or answering. All it does is ruin your reputation. So going to 2015, personally, I like to say, and this is a little self-serving because of my book, but I like to say that 2015 needs to be the year of doing what I call looking people in the eye digitally. The last few decades of marketing tactics have made us lazy communicators. We think clicking a button means making a friend. Most often, we don't even pay attention to who we're talking to, other than via the data we collect, and even that's a very big maybe. And, as far as I see it, in order to fix this, and to really to start benefit from social relationships, both as individuals and companies, we need to start looking people in the eye digitally. We need to fit our world to digital. We don't need to fit digital to our world. And and what does that mean? It means calling people by name. It means reading their profiles. It means using all the tools out there to actually get to know people. It means having a conversation with them about things that are important to them rather than the things that are important to you. It's about, when you talk about employee advocacy, which is a huge growing area. I'm on the board of a company called Dynamic Signal. As far as I'm concerned, they're the #1 platform in the space, and it's why I joined them. I had opportunities to join all the other companies. And even they're out there building platforms that help companies do compliance, provide content, empower their employees to share stuff without fear. But one of the things that the platform can't do for you, because it's up to the company to do this, is start empowering people to be social themselves. Is start helping them to build their social presence. It's about helping every employee in your company to build their influence and understand how important it is to do that and not worry about what they're going to say. Do for others without expectation of anything directly in return. And I promise you, they will support you. I mean, try this thing one day, whether it's in your law office or anybody else who has an office with more than just a few people. Find that person that doesn't like you. There's always one, okay? Whether they come out with it or not, whether you just know by the way they look at you, the way they snicker when you make a comment, whatever. Find that person, and every day for the next 2 weeks, bring them a cup of coffee in the morning. Or, again, not if they drink tea, but I'm using this as an idea. Bring them something that's important to them every single morning, and I guarantee you they will not be able to help themselves but to do something back in return.
Great advice. Sometimes it's interesting. What I learned a long time ago from my dad was a lot of times when you perceive or you're under the impression somebody doesn't like you or someone is being rude to you, you have no idea what's going on in their day. You have no idea what they've just been through. It's a perception thing. And by giving people the benefit of the doubt, and just because you hold a door open and they don't acknowledge you or say thank you, that doesn't mean they don't appreciate it. They may be having something really, really serious happening at home or what have you. Bringing a cup of coffee, that opens that door. That allows for the engagement. It's a great tip.
Or smile. Or
smile,
okay,
yeah.
I have a Twitter handle, That's just be nice. It's just underscore the letter B underscore nice. And then I have a hashtag that I'm pretty well known for, just be nice. And then there's a woman named Chris Wittenberg who started a company called Be Good to People. Maybe you've seen the stickers on my laptop or the shirt I wear when I travel that says it. And I got to tell you, it's really so easy. Now, look, I went through this really miserable. I was always a nice guy, but I was also a New Yorker. You know, you get agitated, you got an attitude, somebody bumps into you, you look at them and go, dude, you know, what are you doing? And then I went through this horrible fight to keep my daughters in my life. And when it ended, even though I won, I was very angry over the time I lost, over what it did to my finances. And I just woke up one morning and said, I don't want to be angry anymore. And I want to take it to another extent. I don't want to just not be angry. I want to default to happy. Most kids, when they're young, default to happy. They just do. You show me somebody you know, somebody in this audience who can actually raise their hand and say, I default to happy. No, we default to stress. We default to angry. We default to annoyed. We default to worried. Okay? Try defaulting to happy. Now, when people bump into me in the city of New York, which happens every day because they're all walking around looking down at their devices, I don't get upset. I stand there. I see someone coming. I wait for them to bump into me. And then when they look up, I just smile at them. And I stand there smiling. I go, hi, how's your day? And they don't know what to do with it. And my hope is that they will take that and do that to the next person and recognize that it just doesn't pay to get. I mean, look, have you seen the movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze? And
about 100 times.
Right, and he's training the guys, and they say, well, what do we do if this happens? He says, just be nice. They said, what about this? He goes, just be nice. They said, what about if he says, and he goes, just be nice until I tell you it's time not to be nice. Now, of course, there is a point at which sometimes you have to stand up for yourself or you have to handle the situation. But all in all, just be nice and smile, and I promise it'll come back to you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was an undersized front doorman in college also, and I wasn't attending, and so that was my secret, is being nice, diffusing the situation, and it works wonders, and you can carry that technique throughout your professional career. Bob Berg wrote a great book I give to every young trial lawyer, Adversaries into Allies, and it talks about those people skills and how you can appreciate where the people are coming from. And let me ask you a question though. When you have this philosophy, and by the way, you're known for your philosophy. I'm going to quote it for you. It says, life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. I love that. I'm the most optimistic guy in the world. But Ted, what do you do when that rain turns into hail, when that rain turns into a big snowstorm that we're seeing on the East Coast right now? How do you deal with those situations? Do you have any suggestions you can help us all out with when things don't go well with our digital online efforts? We're being trolled by somebody. Something bad's happened. How do you deal with those situations?
Well, you know, first of all, you named a couple of different things. So obviously when calamity happens, when real troubles happen, you know, it's easy for anybody who's not involved to say, hey, just smile, just be nice, be happy. It's all about attitude. You know, that's easy to say. But it's really not always a minute-to-minute thing. It's an overall perspective. So when you're in the moment and something bad is happening, you got to deal with it. And it can create anger, worry, stress. Well, realize that, first of all, it's going to end. Second of all, understand that you can affect it with your attitude. That doesn't mean you can fix it or change it. But like literally, you know, I talk about skipping, you know, and how I used to take my daughter skipping whenever they got upset, and how if you when you're feeling bad, get up and skip, and it'll make you feel better. And I actually do that myself. I'll be having a bad day, and I'll just take a couple of skips, and it hasn't changed my day, but it just makes me remember that there's something else beyond that. So, you know, that's from one point. When it goes to online trolls or critics, I do my best to embrace critics. I think critics have a lot of value. And remember, by the way, trolling and being hateful is very different than being a critic.
Sure,
critics have value. I like to say haters hate. And what I do is I ignore haters. I mean, and to me, most of them will go away because they want you to get upset. They want to get you engaged. And critics, I embrace them. I want to hear what they have to say. I'm hoping to better what I do, my product, something else. And then even haters sometimes I'll embrace. I get people that have jumped in line and said, return on relationship is a bunch of crap. I mean, a pretty well-known guy did it once. He put a header on his Facebook page, and I invited him to come to my next conference. And I thanked him for his input. What happens? They go away. You know, and then again, going back to the critics thing, what I said to him was, tell me what the problem is so that I can better my message. Well, you're not giving KPIs around how you achieve it. Now, I couldn't do that right away, but over time, I've come up with some ways to talk about that a little bit more clearly. So I appreciate that, and I tell brands that all the time. At Elf Cosmetics, EyeSlipsFace.com, where I was the CMO, and I built I built their brand on social media. I would go through all our social looking for the critics, because to me they were giving me advice and information I needed to hear. So, you know, that's basically my approach in that respect. You know, I think those are two different questions. You know, again, going through challenges, you know, it's easy for people to say you should be on the up and up. But again, I have learned, and I've been through some very serious challenges in that respect, that, you know, that attitude can change things.
Well, you're a sharp guy, so I figured I could ask you two questions at once. But well, you know, one of the things is you can always, you know, I know with my kids, I always tell them, ask yourself the question, what did I just learn? Or what can I learn from this experience? And then keep improving and change your actions so that it doesn't happen again. When we try cases and we get unexpected results or results that didn't go the way we wanted them to go, I enjoy going out and talking to my jurors in the hallway and asking them, you know, what did you like? What didn't you like? What could I have done differently? You know, one trial is like, well, you need to slow down. You're speaking too fast. The next trial, well, you're speaking too slowly. You need to speed up, right? It's all good. It's all good. And but here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to allow you, because I've got you for about 30, 40 minutes. We're up to that time period. This has been awesome. I'm going to allow you to scoot on out of here and skip through the rest of the day and put smiles on everyone's faces. Ted, really appreciate your time, your insight. Enjoyed reading your book last week to prepare for this interview. And I'm looking forward to continuing building our relationship. That's what it's all about. It'd be a pleasure to stay in touch. Ted, if our viewers, if our listeners on the podcast would like to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Well, I'm a really easy guy to find. So it's at Ted Rubin on Twitter. It's tedrubin@gmail.com. My phone number is 516-270-5511. If you Google Ted Rubin, just about everything you'll find on the first 3 or 4 pages is me, other than the 97-year-old Medal of Award winner from World War II. That's not me, and I don't want to take any credit there for any number of reasons. And I would just love to leave your audience with a couple of last thoughts. You know, I talk about skipping, you know, and people laugh, and I skip on stage, and it's fun. But what I like to say is that if you can make everybody you interact with and engage with skip metaphorically after every interaction, you win. I mean, you win as a brand, you win as a person. And remember that relationships are like muscle tissue. The more you engage them, the stronger and more valuable they become. Thanks for having me, Mitch. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Ted, I think that's a beautiful way for us to end up this interview. Thank you very much, my friend, and much success with all your skipping through life. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.